All right. Good morning. Good Wednesday. That's a freebie for those of you whose days are running together and you forgot what day it was. Yes, it is Wednesday. My name is Julie Robinson, and I'm part of the customer success team. As a former language learner, bilingual teacher, and instructional coach, I just want to share some ideas today about how we can reinforce vocabulary. So this is for our English learners especially. We know that one of the biggest things that we can do to help our English learners is to really build that vocabulary. And sometimes we look at vocabulary and we say, oh, well, I have to memorize certain vocabulary words, or I have a list of vocabulary words. Remember, vocabulary is just that set of that library, that mental library of words that we have available to us. So any word that I can learn and introduce to myself, that's a vocabulary word. So don't worry about just the ones that are highlighted or in bold print. The very first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about instructions and then how we use it for reading, and then how we can also connect that to writing. And that will all help reinforce that vocabulary. So the very first thing is instructions. And this is really important because right now your students are receiving instructions. It may be online instructions, but they're receiving instructions from their teachers. So depending on how the instructions are coming, that could impact your students. Now, those instructions are really academic language. So that's where your students can get some of that academic language. And you can ask your student, hey, do you understand the instructions? And if they say yes, well, great. Have them re-explain it to you in English in their own words. And that will help with a couple of things. First, it helps out with summarization skills and it helps out with retelling skills, but also it helps to build up their vocabulary and to use different words in their vocabulary that they have available to them. So that will also help you as a parent to know, do they really understand what they're supposed to be doing? Okay. And that's really important. If they say no, now this was me when I was learning Spanish in a foreign country, I didn't want to be that student. Like, I don't know. And so this is a great opportunity to take advantage of while you're at home, because you can get that one-on-one low risk with the teacher and go back and say, hey, I didn't understand. And can you explain that to me? Or can you send a diagram? Or can you send pictures? Those are things that can be very helpful for a student. Teachers out there, if you're watching, just remember that you have a plan in your head and you know what you want. And this happens to me all the time. I think I'm being very clear in giving instructions, but then I still have questions. The clearer you can be on the front end and the more concise and the better explanation or the better pictures, that just makes it so much easier for you as a teacher, because then there aren't the additional questions on the back end. So just remember that. It's best practices, not just for your English learners, but any struggling students, that's going to be beneficial. So again, my story, I didn't want to be that one. All right. So be sure to ask those questions. This is academic language that is coming at them. So a great way to reinforce that academic language. The second thing that I was saying was with the reading. So when we look at reading, what I would do with my students in my classroom, we would have a notebook. It doesn't matter, just anything cheap. It doesn't have to be this big, whatever. It can be a piece of loose paper. I don't care. But if they just keep it together, what we would do is we would go, okay, this is my vocabulary. This is a word that I don't know, or maybe I think I know it. So what is the word? Either I know it or I don't know it, or I think I might know it. And then what is that meaning? And it can be a synonym. It can be a meaning. It can be a picture. For example, I did luminous earlier. So if my word was luminous, and I don't know the word, then I look it up, or I use my context clues and I figure out what that means. Or if ultimately I need to ask my teacher, I could ask my teacher, but I'm going to try and figure out what that means. When I find out what it means, I can just draw a picture, and that works for your younger kids. So maybe I draw a light bulb because it means bright light. And so maybe I just put then bright light. That's my first word. And if I actually feel like I know it, then I can put a little smiley face or a green or a check or whatever over here. Okay. Once I think that I know it. And if you gather all of these words, now I have luminous and I have bright light. So now I have two synonyms. This helps me because now I have two extra words in my vocabulary. And so I can use these simultaneously or at the same time, right? Did you see how I did that? But when I have more words, I can speak clearer and I can communicate more clearly what I want to get communicated. So as they're reading, they can use these. All right. So then they'll collect all of these. And this is something you could take a picture of and send it back to the teacher. This is what we're doing for vocabulary. Your teacher may already have something in place. This is just a very simplistic format to use. If they're trying to figure out what those words mean, they could also, if they're doing, maybe they're reading a newspaper, could be a magazine, maybe they're reading text or a virtual book. They could look those up on www.dictionary.com. That's one of my favorites. My other favorite is www.thesaurus.com. I do like both of those. I especially like the thesaurus.com because when we then get into connecting and connecting it with writing, we have that extra word that we can use. Okay. So I like these two. If for some reason, after looking at these two and all of the context clues that you have available to you within your reading, you still don't understand, you can, if you're Spanish speaking, and I'm sure in other languages they have other dictionary translations. I like to use SpanishDict.com, and that's where I'll go first. And then they'll do phrases or individual words. So that's another place to look to get that help. Okay. So that said, I really like the resource that we have, our online books that we have. It's really cool because the student can go in and push on any of those words that's in the reading, and it will say it audibly so that the student understands how that's supposed to be pronounced. And this is really good right now while they're at home because they can then repeat it out loud to make sure that they can say it. So it's a great time for that. Any word, like I said, it doesn't have to just be the highlighted words that are the vocabulary words. Any word that as English learners, we're bringing into our new library, those are vocabulary words. So as they're learning words, they can jot down any of those words, not just the highlighted. But if they do come across a bold print word or a highlighted word in our text, if they click on that, it takes them back to a built-in glossary. And that's beneficial for the student because then they can see, okay, oh, this is what the meaning is. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. The last thing that I would say would be if you have a way to get your students into writing, if they can write these words and connect these words, if they'll use the synonyms together in a sentence or use them in a paragraph, anytime that you can write and reinforce what they're doing. Let me just say that again. Anytime that you can take those words that they're learning from their vocabulary and write them down in a coherent way to make a story, that's going to help reinforce their understanding. One other thing that I would do is you can always take those words, if they've gone ahead and they've put those together, they can make little vocabulary cards or they can make matching games to also. For our English learners, one of the most important things is building that vocabulary. This is a great time to do it. Looking at the instruction, so trying to get the academic vocabulary, and then connecting it to the reading, figuring out what words they do know and what they can add, and then connecting it to writing to reinforce that. Thanks a lot for joining us today. If you have any comments, please go ahead and put them in the comments. I don't know. Are they at the side? Are they at the bottom? I don't even know. You know. So put your comments in, give us some feedback. What can we do that would help you out? We would love to be a support to you. So thank you for joining us here at the Red Cape Nation and have a great day.